Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, fellow writers, to your favorite writing podcast. That over there is Carissa Harlow, aka Catherine, her dark alter ego, aka Lewis, my writing buddy. And I'm Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien, although I don't like trees nearly as much as he seemed to.
He does.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's finally warm out here, so I'm wearing a sundress, and I'm so
Nice.
pleased.
Cool. So it's also Ash Wednesday, so I have my Ash sticker that I used last year. I put Ash on my forehead. Ha ha ha.
That's
For those
hilarious.
of you who can't see me, I have a little picture of Ash that I physically have on my forehead because it's Ash Wednesday.
She's physically put onto her forehead.
Yes.
I forgot about that you did that last year, and I thought it was so funny, and I still think it's so funny.
I love it.
Wednesday,
so.
Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm actually doing Lent this year, and I have like this like 40 days to Easter devotional I'm doing, which I've never really done before. So yeah.
Nice.
I've decided I'm going to give up watching TV in bed, because when I watch TV in bed, it's usually just because I'm like, I don't like want to go to sleep yet. Like it's never like meaningful relaxation time, like when it's like right before I go to sleep. So I'm like, I'm going to do something else. Like, I don't know, read my Bible or read a book, or like, just do something better than just watching TV. It's only mindless for me when I'm in bed watching it. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't do anything in bed except sleep, because the second I lay down, I can't focus on anything. Everything is mindless. So
yeah,
I don't fall asleep necessarily, but I'm not doing anything productive. So.
Exactly. I'm pretty much just mindlessly watching TV at that point, and like I could just go to sleep instead even, and like not just mindlessly watch TV. So that's what I'm giving up, and I don't think I'm hoping I won't miss it that much. I might miss it out of like a weird comfort thing, but it's not like it's doing me any good. So
yeah, Lent is so interesting because I don't know, I did it for most of my childhood, and then I've done it like on and off, and you find that like around week 2 you either really miss that thing or you no longer need it, and then you can kind of take that going forward as, okay, this is something I enjoy or want to do, versus this is just a waste of my time and energy. So
yeah, so I'm curious to see what happens with this, because in my head I'm like, oh, it's no big deal, and I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. Because often I am busy up until I get in bed at the end of the day. And so I think sometimes I rationalize, like turning on the TV. I'm like, well, at least if I've watched some TV, then it means that at least I had a little bit of me time. Even though I don't really enjoy it. Like I'm not really engaged with it. So we'll see. We'll see how I cope with it. But yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to it, Yeah. Oh, I'm so pop. Shout out to Maddie. My sister tried to call me.
Nice.
Recording, don't worry, gave you shout out. Anyways, how's your week been?
Good. Let's see, what have I done of interest? Not much. It did rain today, and the puppies were very excited and also concerned by it, because they really love the wind when they're outside, but when they're inside it makes howling noises and they do not like that. So baby. Luna was like cowering under my desk, and I was like, it's okay, it's not gonna hurt you.
Sweet girl.
I know. And their birthdays are coming up. They are almost a year olds, which is crazy.
Oh, when are their birthdays?
Aurora is February 27th and Luna is March 7th.
Oh, so, my goodness.
I know. And for like, since the time we got them, Aurora always gets really excited when the mail comes. Like she wants to, play with the mail and chew it and stuff. And today she actually got her first piece of mail because Chewy sent her like a birthday thing.
Oh, so that's cute. So cute.
I love it. So my mom's like, here, take it. And she took it and she's running around the house crazy with it. It was great.
Oh my gosh. That is adorable. Yeah. I love that.
So yeah, puppy stuff. What? I don't even know what today is. So Wednesday? I'm sure other things happened.
Yes, Wednesday.
Yeah, but I don't remember a lot of things for some reason. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. How was your week?
No worries. My week was fine. I am so hungry, but also nauseous. And I did convince my brother and my husband, because Javi was home for just 24 hours, not even 24 hours. But I was like, you guys, let's go to La Parrillada, which is like this tiny little hole in the wall Mexican place. And my mom and I stumbled across it once. And it's
Nice.
just
That's the
so
best.
tasty. Yeah, it's so good. And neither of them had ever been there, and they were like not quite sure. I think because like, listen, my standards for like edible consumption are not that high. So
Fair
I
enough.
think they were like, I'm like, honestly, if I can get it down my mouth, I
Mm-hmm.
probably am
This is
fine to eat it.
gourmet.
Yeah, it's gourmet. Like I will eat leftovers that are questionably old and I won't bat an eye. I'm not a connoisseur. But
Yeah.
I think they were both pleasantly surprised and everyone really
Good.
enjoyed the food. So that's great.
Nice.
And all I want to eat is Mexican food. I get into a Mexican food kick like at least
Mm-hmm.
once a year, but I don't usually indulge it. This year I want to indulge it. I live in
Do it.
Texas. What am I
Do it.
doing not eating Mexican food
Yeah.
all the time? Yeah.
Indulge it all
So
the time. Every time it
exactly.
comes up.
Exactly. So that's been going on. And most recently, as of yesterday, so when we went to go get Mexican food, we put Ruby in the bathroom with her bed, and like I clear all other items out of the bathroom when because
Mm,
that's like, because she's not crate trained, because we're not doing a crates. Come at me,
right.
everybody. I know you all have your opinions about it, but I put her in the bathroom with everything out of there, and she's actually gotten like very used to it, and she's pretty much just sleeps. And so we were only be gone for like an hour and a half to go get food and come back. And so put her in there, she was fine, came back, and when I let her out, she had a limp, like on her back foot. And I was like,
Oh,
what could you
what
have
happened?
possibly done? You've been in the bathroom. And we looked around and we're like, is there anything she possibly could have gotten her foot caught in? Like there's like an air conditioning vent. I'm like, maybe you got your toe caught in it and like pulled your toe or something. Like that's the
Right.
only, and that's like a long shot. And that's the only
Right.
that or maybe a scorpion came in and stung her, but I didn't see any stings or anything. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
would it still be like that bad the next day? I don't know. I've luckily, knock on wood, not been stung by a scorpion yet, although we do have a lot
Yeah.
of them out here. So I don't know what's going on with her, but I feel bad because she's still limpy. Like it is better today than it was yesterday. Well, than it was last night. So I'm like improvement, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems to like vary. Like 1 hour she'll walk around on it and it's fine. And the next hour she's like holding it up in the air like she can't put it down. And so I don't know what to do because it's not like you can just make like a day of vet appointment. Like there's never
Mm-hmm.
availability for that. So I'm torn. I'm like, I guess I can call and make a vet appointment for whenever they can take her. And then if she's better before then, I can just cancel it.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have to just do that because
Yeah. I
if
mean,
she's
we did
gonna need
that
to
with Luna
go.
once. She had like her foot. I don't even remember. I know she got it shaved and she had the little foot.
I remember that
But
picture.
I think we called and we got a next day appointment just because it happened to kind of be free. And so then
Yeah.
we went in and like it was fine and whatever. So,
What did
I
they say
mean,
about her foot?
they just gave her some pain meds and said she probably just stepped on something or
See, that's the thing.
some kind
I'm
of
like,
sting.
she kind of just like, she's a puppy and she can kind of just
Mm-hmm.
sleep all day. And she kind of does. So I'm like, I don't want her to like be in pain, but I really think that
Right.
she's like pulled something or strained something.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't want to make you suffer, but I also don't want to take you to the vet if they're just going to say, oh, yeah, she pulled a muscle, go
Mm-hmm.
home.
Like,
Because it's a
thanks. I
whole
kind of
thing.
figured, but
Yeah, exactly. And I have to take off
yeah.
work to get all the way to the vet and
Mm.
back. And I already have to do that tomorrow morning to take the car to the mechanic. So I'm like, I can't do that. And I had to take off last week too. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to
Yeah.
be in so much trouble. So I'm leaning towards writing it out if so long as it seems like she keeps getting better. But
Mm-hmm.
she's confusing me with, I'm looking at her, she's behind me on the bed right now. She's confusing me by like 1 hour looking completely fine, and the next hour she's like, my poor foot. And I'm like, I don't understand
I don't know
how
what
that's
to do.
possible. Yeah, so she's just got me all over the map. Of course, like the car has to have problems and the dog has to have problems at
Yeah.
the same time that require me to leave the house during work hours.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Can dogs like fake injuries if it gets
they
them
can.
attention?
They
Okay,
absolutely
that's
can.
that's what I was
The
thinking.
thing is, yesterday I was like, she couldn't be doing it for attention because she's never done it before. So she doesn't
She
know
doesn't
what
know
the
it would
reaction's
work.
going to be. Yeah. Now
Mhm.
I'm like, as of today, would she know by now? Like, how fast would
Right.
she pick up on that? I
Like
don't
she could have
know.
started out with a real limp and it's like, oh my gosh, everyone's paying attention to me. This is great. And
Yeah.
so when it got better, I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know how
exactly. That's the
devious dogs
thing.
are.
I've definitely heard of dogs doing that. I do think that
Mhm.
they will absolutely do that. Like, I had a friend whose dog developed a fake cough for attention, and the vet was like, the dog is faking it. It's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's
Oh
faking
my
it for
gosh.
attention. And I was like, God, dogs are the worst. However, I think that like she's also not really like playing with Winnie right now. And so I'm like, I
Mm,
think if she was faking it, she would be playing with Winnie still.
right.
So I'm guessing that she's actually in pain. The poor baby. I feel like a
Aw.
horrible dog mom that I'm not like rushing her to like the animal hospital, but
I mean,
I
like,
wouldn't if it were me. So
yeah, dogs are strange. And like, I don't know, thinking ahead to like kids or like if you're babysitting kids or anything like that, I'm like, my standards for what I would take you into the hospital for are so different from what I would go to the hospital for. Because
yeah,
I'll sit there with like a broken toe
yeah,
being like, I'm fine. It's gonna
I did.
heal. It's gonna be fine. But like if
Yeah,
a
I did
child did,
that.
I'd be like, we need to get you to the hospital now, even though they can't even really do
Yeah.
anything about a
See,
broken
with a
toe.
broken toe on a child, I'd take him to urgent care and they can
Hmm.
splint it just so people know, like, hey, I'm a good like
Yeah.
caretaker.
I'm
But if
not
I got a
abusing this
broken
child.
toe, I wouldn't do anything. And I didn't
Yeah.
when I broke my toe. I just taped it next to the other toe. And I was like,
Hmm.
good enough. I broke
Yep.
my hand. I did go when it swelled up really bad 2 or 3 days later. I finally went when it was like all
Yeah.
gross and discolored days afterwards.
Right.
And they said, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And I said, liars.
Look at this hand. It's definitely
There's
not
no
fine.
way. It's the size of a grapefruit. I don't
Oh my
think it's
gosh.
okay. Yeah, that was fun. It was a boxer's
Yeah.
factor. But so anyways, so I don't want to take her, but I don't want to be a bad dog mom. So, and it's not just because of laziness. It's also because of schedule and also because I don't want to go pay a lot of money for them to say, oh, she just like sprained it or pulled it or
Yeah.
something. If there's nothing
Yeah.
they can do. So that's where I'm at, which is just very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any other exciting news on the farm. My brother-in-law came last week, which I think I mentioned,
Hmm.
and he tilled up the main garden plot, so that's great. And then they're coming back this weekend, and he's going to till up the other 2 garden plots. And my sister and I and Grayson, the almost 2-year-old, are going to like put down all like the soil supplements and actually plant stuff. So I'm excited because everything will finally be in the ground, which means I have to start going out there to water twice a day.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's going to be like I'm getting back into the routine. But now that it's not cold outside, I'm happy to be outside again. It's not like
Yeah, that's fair.
painful to walk outside. So
Yeah.
but that's pretty much it. Well, yeah. I guess we could do you have any book recs for the listeners?
I do not. I feel like a total fraud. But
LOL, you're like, I've never read a book in my life.
what is a book? It's like my secrets are getting revealed. Like I've actually never read anything. I'm not literate.
I don't know how to read.
Yeah.
It's all a fraud.
But yeah, so I really have nothing. I'm
That is
sorry.
so funny.
But
I will heavily book rec King of Scars by Lee Bardugo,
oh,
which I mentioned
yes.
I was reading last time. I will actually book rec it. And
Cool.
I will say, so you definitely have to have read Six of Crows in Crooked Kingdom and the whole Shadow and Bone series to
Mhm.
really understand King of Scars. Like you really can't not have read them because you'll miss so much.
Mhm.
But maybe on another sense, like there's only like 3 problems with the whole book. And I don't want to give spoilers, but if you guys have read those series and then you read King of Scars, you'll immediately see probably these 3 things I'm talking about. The book
Okay.
is still amazing. I would still rate
Yeah.
it very highly, but I wish it didn't have these like 3
You
glaring
mean like
problems.
inconsistencies or like things that change that you don't like?
Just things, basically the way that like events that began in Shadow and Bone or Six of Crows, and they've, you would just assume that these events continue on when the book ends. The way that they've developed in this story
Yeah.
feels inconsistent with the characters
Okay.
that we know. So that was strange.
Right.
I still was an awesome book though. I mean, still heavily recommend, but just know going into it, some things are going to be unexpected, but still wonderful.
Okay.
So
That's actually very
correct, but
intriguing. Now I'm
yeah.
like, ooh, what are my assumptions about how things continued to go that would have been
Yeah.
changed?
It's
So
just in a few ways because mostly it's good, but
mhm.
there's just a few ways where I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
This?
You
I
just kind of
mean,
block that stuff out. You're like, this isn't canon. I'm just gonna ignore that.
100%. Yeah. So if you guys want to listen to a more in-depth episode on it, you can. Not by me because I was way too asthmatic and I had to bow out of the episode. But over on our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club, my co-host over there, Kendall Shaw, aka Dr. Spoons Palermo, was joined by Haley, her roommate, and our pod nurse.
Yeah.
She's joined several times before, and so they took over the episode for me, which was great. I didn't have to be there. Not that I didn't want to, but I was like quite physically dying. That's the other thing too, is I'm like, I'm just now not dying. Like I was horribly sick. So I don't want to go to the doctor. Like even if it's just taking the dog to the doctor. But anyways, that's not on topic. But it's very in-depth episode. Haley has some very, very strong opinions. Kendall has probably more middle of the road opinions, and my opinions were probably a little bit more like in celebration of the book than either of theirs were. I probably liked it more than either of them. But yeah, anyways, but it's a good episode if you guys want to listen to it. They're a very funny pair. They always have been. So and Haley said in that episode that if I were a book character, she'd be attracted to me. And I was like, wow. And she's like, it's the competence. And I was like, every part of my like perfectionistic, like you have to earn love, all that part of me is like, I've done it. I have succeeded.
I have achieved.
It's so funny. But anyways.
Oh my gosh. So I like that she phrases it if you were a book character. That's kind of funny.
I know. I was like, my main character syndrome is like blossoming right now. I've no one has ever given me a better compliment. Yeah, exactly. And Kendall said, she was like, wow, with Ash's main character energy, her reaction is gonna be and it was. I was thrilled.
Nice.
You always wonder if people are going to talk about you when you're not there,
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Anyways, so there's my book rec. What about our word of the week?
Our word of the week is Brontide. Brontide, and it is a low muffled sound of distant thunder, especially along sea coasts caused by seismic activity, or just generally a rumbling noise.
Brontide. What a first beautiful word to describe a beautiful phenomenon. And how on earth do we not use this word anymore?
Brontide. It even sounds like it's kind of a rumbling word. I don't know, the BR and then like
Brontide.
the Brontide.
Yeah.
It just it's a cool one.
That's a great one. I like it. At first I was thinking it was going to be like Bronte something. Like I was trying to come up with like a Bronte sisters pun. And I didn't, so it's a good thing we didn't go that way anyways. But I think Brontide needs to be brought back. Like absolutely. That's a beautiful
one. Great word.
And I feel like it's of the distant thunder.
Yeah, it's like not necessarily universal, but there are a lot of situations in which you could use it, like across genres. And if you're going for atmosphere, or if you're going for like, suddenly something big happened, or anything like that.
Yeah, so. I like that so much. That's an excellent word of the week. I think that's going to be in like my top 5 favorites.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have those too. Sometimes I say one and I'm like, this is definitely a favorite of mine. So
we got to start like ranking our favorites.
Yeah. Just have an episode one day of just ranking random vocabulary words.
Yeah, of all of the episodes. If we get to episode 100 and it's just us ranking 100 the 100 words we've gone through individually.
I'm not opposed to that. That'd be pretty cool.
I'm not opposed to it either. And it actually wouldn't be too hard, because I do, if you guys haven't noticed in the show descriptions below, in the episode descriptions, there is our word of the week is at the top of every single one, along with the skip notes, which if you guys have ever wanted to just skip past all of this stuff and just hear about the whatever writing topic we're discussing, you guys can do that. It's in the skip notes. I don't plug it very often, because why would you want to when you could listen to our sparkling conversation and you could hear about the fact that I'm a horrible dog owner, make you feel better about the pets that you own,
Exactly. Yeah. That's what we're here for, to make you feel better about yourselves by comparison.
Exactly. Well, should we get into our theme for this episode?
Yes. So I don't know if you know what this is. Did I explain this to you yet?
Not really.
Ish. Okay.
Like you've mentioned it before, and I looked at like what you wrote about it in the document, but not in great detail.
Yeah. So this is a trope. I don't know if it's actually like an established trope, but I'm gonna call it a trope. I call it the flashback-by-trial trope. So I don't know how much it tells you already. I wrote down a definition because I don't know if this is a real thing. So the one I came up with was, it's a trope that when characters undergo an illusion, a game, or other challenge, usually to cross a boundary or receive a prize, so audiences see pieces of their backstory or their past.
Oh, yeah.
So, or the villain's past, potentially. So I came up with a couple kind of like general things. I think the Moral Instruments series does this in one of the, I think in the third book when they're kind of figuring out how to defeat Valentine. So if any of you have read that series, when they kind of flash back to like the angel getting captured and that kind of stuff, I think that one would kind of count here. I think there was some of this in Caraval.
I was
These are
gonna
like my
say
kind
this
of
sounds like Caraval. Yeah, I'm
where
pretty
like
sure.
there's like, you know, an illusion going on to kind of reveal things that happened in the past. And like it can in sci-fi, I think, and a lot of times in dystopian too, because Divergent sort of does this in the second book. They use technology a lot. So like if there are cameras around a lot, they actually like play footage of things that happened in the past so that people understand what happened to people.
Yeah. I
So
feel
I
like
think when
Illuminae does that too.
yeah. In Insurgent, Veronica Roth with the Divergent series, I think we would qualify Triss being interrogated by Candor as kind of this kind of vibe, because she's telling, you know, what happened to Will and everything. And in that instance, it kind of acts as the summary of things that happened in the first book for the second book now, which I think can be a good way to use it. But essentially it's just like if people are reliving a memory or like trying to redo a memory or something is playing on a screen, and if it's like a torment or a test or a challenge of some sort, hallucinations would count for this. A lot of times people like take some kind of drug because they're like trying to talk to like the gods, or there's some kind of like potion that they have to take, and then they have a trial that comes after that. Probably the best example is in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when Harry and Dumbledore go into the pensieve.
Oh yeah.
Because they are trying to learn things, they have to figure out where the Horcrux is.
Right.
But they're doing it through other people's memories and flashbacks. So yeah, I have like a bunch of examples here. I do think I don't want to spoil this too much, because you read Fallen by Lauren Kate, right? But you haven't read the rest of the series.
Yeah.
In
that's
one
okay.
of the
I'll
books,
forget anyways. So
that's true. Your memory is terrible.
Yeah.
You would really benefit from a flashback by trial trope in your real life.
I really genuinely would. I would be like, this is like for the first time.
Yeah. So in the Fallen series by Lauren Kate, I can't remember if it's the third book or the fourth book. But Luce goes through like all her past lives, she's trying to escape them. So she has to like go through her memories to escape the fact that she's in her memories. And so we get to see a ton of her past lives, but it's also like plot relevant in the sense that she is trying to run through them and like escape and figure things out. So yeah, I feel like this is really common as like it's in TV a lot too, where in like one episode, or you know, as like a minor subplot thing, characters are like reliving memories, or they're in some kind of illusion or hallucination that they have to get through. And so it functions for readers or watchers as a way to learn more about the characters. But hopefully, if you're doing it right, it's also plot relevant and pushing things forward, because now they're getting somewhere by reliving these things. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the beginning of Illuminae is that, now that you mention it, for both characters.
Yeah, I feel like sci-fi is a really great opportunity to do this, because you have the whole
dark matter
technology
does this
thing
too. When it's with the technology thing, 100%.
Because you can like play things on a screen, and especially if people are keeping secrets from each other, and then you play it on the big screen and like the spaceship or whatever, now everyone can see what happened. That's kind of tormenting, that's kind of a trial, but now anyone watching or reading or whatever knows what happened, but also the characters do, and then it creates conflict. So
you call this the flashback by trial trope?
Yeah, that's what I'm calling it.
Not trial by flashback.
I mean, it can be either one. I guess.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I was trying to think. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be that the character is having a flashback. It could just be that they're recollecting what's going on, or we're basically seeing it.
Yeah, so I think the difference is like when you do a normal flashback, particularly in writing, this is also true of like TV and everything, but in writing, you like shift backwards, right? It's not actually anything happening in real time. It's just the character remembering things that happened to them in the past or relating it to what's going on now. With this kind of trope, it's like the past has come back now, and it's like relevant to an actual
Gotcha.
plot thing that's happening right now. Like they
Gotcha.
are in some kind of simulation,
Yeah.
or they're in some kind of hallucination, or
Yeah.
they have to pass a test or a
Yeah.
trial. I think villains do this a lot. So
Mhm.
like you have to prove worthiness or
Yeah.
something like that. So they, you know, they drug you, or they put you through like a series of trials where, you know, you're faced with your loved ones hating you or trying to kill you, or you have to kill a loved
Yeah.
one or something like
Mhm.
that. Divergent does this a lot too, especially in the first book, where you have to, you know, kind of either change things or relive them, something that's really
Extremely
emotionally
traumatic.
hard,
Yeah.
exactly, in order to get where you want to go.
Right. But the
um
flashback is practically incited by the plot.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's like happening again almost. Either
Yeah.
people like are watching it or people are reliving it.
Right. Gotcha. Because of
And
something that someone did in the plot.
yeah, exactly. I think the most recent example of this is the Blood Origin of The Witcher. I don't know if you watched that or if anyone
No, I
watched
have
it.
not. My whole family
Okay.
has, but I have not.
Okay. This isn't even really a big spoiler, but they're trying to get somewhere. I'm not going to remember where. I'm not going to lie, I didn't love it. But in one of I think it's the second episode, they're trying to get to like this witch healer, and there's this boundary around her land that like
Mhm.
sends you into like your most traumatic memories, and so you
Oh
have to like
gosh.
get through them in order to get to her.
Yeah.
So like I crossing a boundary or receiving a prize, I think, is a big motivator for this type of thing.
Yeah.
Like with Tris and Divergent, if anyone remembers, like Four lets her go through his fear simulation with her.
Oh, right, right,
And
right.
that's when she sees like what happened to him in his past and like what his father was like. So
Yeah.
he has to get through that. We're seeing it from the outside perspective with Tris, but it's still, you know, he's going through the torment of reliving that every
Yeah.
time he goes into that.
God,
But it's
that's so
also, so it's
horrifying.
happening actively, but we are also learning what happened to him in the past that made him that way.
Mhm.
So I hope
I
that's
see.
clear.
Yeah, no, that
I think.
definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. It's like it's a forced flashback, and
Yeah,
it's
essentially.
it's different than just I guess it's like an active versus versus a
Hmm.
passive flashback is kind of how it feels. And in a passive flashback, it's like it's informative about a character's past, but that's about it. Whereas I
Hmm.
feel like an active flashback is something that the characters can kind of interact with. And so
Yes.
you learn more about them in the present as well, and you learn
Yeah.
about their feelings about the past, not just what
Hmm.
happened in the past. So I
And how
think
they've
there's a
maybe
lot to
changed since
them.
then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think you're right. I think sci-fi specifically, there's a lot of opportunities to do that
Hmm.
when in sci-fi.
Yep. I think too, the difference between like a normal flashback and this kind of flashback is that most of the time, there are exceptions, but most of the time with a normal flashback, it's like a paragraph or two. You don't necessarily go on about what happened because
Mhm.
we're not there. It's
Yeah.
not happening right now. And so any emotional impact is kind of um, undermined by the fact that it's in the past. But if you bring like a flashback by trial kind of thing forward, that event, you can go into more detail. You can have it last a while. It can be a major event or a major plot event in the book instead of just being a flashback. And so if there is something, a lot of times, I think possibly a good way to avoid a prologue would because you know those are iffy in
Mhm.
publishing, is
Well, that's
if your
like an
prologue
Illuminae.
involves, yeah, if your prologue just involves your main character in the past going through something traumatic, you just bring it forward
Mhm.
in flashback, in this kind of flashback form, and it
Yep.
can hold the same weight as the other things going on in the book. So
Yeah.
if you're like, well, all of this is really important, but there's this time gap between like when she's 10 and when she's 17 and the events are happening, you can bring it forward by forcing her to kind of relive it,
Yeah.
for the
Even if it's just
audiences.
telling someone else about it in detail, that I feel like that counts, because that's
Yeah.
whether it's in just a conversation or like an interview setting. Like in Illuminae, they're sat down and being recorded in an interview
Mhm.
when they're talking about basically the
Right.
prologue material, the flashback.
Right.
But I guess it doesn't have to be that formal. It could even just be a
Mhm.
conversation, and if it's in
Yeah.
depth enough, I feel
Yeah.
like that can count. That just seems like that might be a little harder to do, which I would still say like look at the opening of Illuminae if you're going to do something like
Mhm.
that, because they managed to balance it so it didn't feel like all telling, no showing, which is I feel like
Mhm.
what can be difficult when you communicate a flashback via dialogue.
Mhm.
That's why the interview format made it so interesting.
But yeah, that's actually a good point, because like the interview style can really work because interviews are kind of like trials. because you're trying to prove that you're not guilty of something usually.
Yeah.
And so any kind of interview kind of style is just kind of a major flashback by trial premise for the story.
Yep.
Because you do want that trial element in there, because if there's no consequences for them telling people about this or reliving it or whatever it is, then you can just have it as a normal flashback. And I think because I love this trope, but I also hate this trope because I feel like sometimes it's overused, in that you want the event to be big enough that it justifies coming back into the present. But you also want to make sure that it's not the only insight we have into what happened to the characters in the past. I feel like they still need to have hints before and after about how that affected them and how it changed them. You don't want to just give this kind of info dump backstory and say, oh, well, and it's active in the plot now, so I don't have to go into any more detail about it.
Yeah.
But really, with any kind of flashback, you should be kind of building up to any kind of reveal, which is like why in passive flashbacks, you want to do it in little bits of information as you go on instead of all at once, so that people are eased into it. And I think you want to look at like a flashback by trial thing as the culmination of all your hints, as opposed to necessarily like a one and done type of situation. That's when I feel like it doesn't work.
I agree. Do you have cable or Sling or anything like that you can watch like the Hallmark Channel on?
No, I don't think so.
Give an example. You have to find, yes, I do. And it's going to sound so cheesy because here's the thing about Hallmark is I love it so much for the holidays. Other than that, I don't watch it, and I do not watch Hallmark shows, like series. I don't watch that. I will occasionally watch like one of their mystery ones if I need like a cozy mystery inspiration. But other than that, I don't watch the shows because I think they're very, very hokey. However, a few weeks ago, my mom came to me and she was like, there's this new show on Hallmark and I want you to watch it with me. And I was like, not on board. What's it about? It's called The Way Home. And dude, it's crazy. I'm going to give you guys all the premise. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, it's actually really freaking good. And the premise is just, I'm in shock at how, like, I can't wait every week for the next episode to come out. So if you guys, any of you have any way to access this show, you should
find it.
You have to find it. It's called The Way Home. And the concept is basically, so there's this like teenager, her parents get divorced. The mom moves back to the hometown and takes the daughter with her. They move in with her mom. And they had this kind of like rift between them because you find out that basically in, I think it was 1999, her like little like 6-year-old brother disappeared, completely went missing, and her father died like 3 months after that. And it was horrible. And there was like this big rift between the daughter and her mom. She got married really young, had a kid really young, moved away. So she moves back, and it's rural. And so there's like this big property. And so basically while they're out there, the teenager, she's like kind of a pill, especially at the beginning. She's like wandering around being a sulky teenager, and she falls into this pond and she gets caught in this seaweed, and you think that she's drowning, but then she manages to get out. But when she gets out, so she's in the same place, but it's 1990. Like, or something like that, or it's 1998 or something.
It's like not her time.
Yeah, it's not her time. And so not only is it time travel, and it's just, she goes, basically she gets out of the pond. She doesn't realize yet until she goes up to her house, and her mom is there as teenage her. Like, it's the teenage version of her mom, and like the younger version of her grandma. And of course her mom's little brother is still there because he hasn't gone missing yet. And her grandfather's still there because he hasn't died. And so it's crazy. But basically the show is, she goes back through the pond or whatever, and she goes back to the normal time. And then basically the whole series is just kind of like her living between both times, and then the mom kind of figures out what's going on with the pond, but neither of them want to talk to each other about it because miscommunication. But actually, I think it's valid. I think it was a valid choice for this reason. But basically, I think it's hinting at that they're going to try and solve her little brother's disappearance by these flashbacks, like when they go back in time. So it's kind of a flashback, but it's active because they're interacting with what's already happened.
Exactly.
So they're not really changing anything that's happened, but they're just interacting with it, and it is so interesting.
Gosh, that's so cool. That kind of scenario is why I like this trope, because you can have some kind of past event coming up, but then the person can like interact with it. And maybe they can't change it in the past, like they don't have that power, but they can maybe like cathartically go through what they would have done if they could have changed it, if they'd known, or they can see something they hadn't seen before.
Exactly.
Or whatever. And I think that's great.
Yeah, so it's
fun.
exciting. You learn more about who the character was. You learn more about who the character is, which means that you can make inferences about what happened to them along the way. And if you just get so much about the character that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I think it's wonderful. And I will say, for another TV show reference, Dark Matter, there's a whole, it's either a 1 or a 2-part episode that is basically all these, spoiler, I guess, but the characters lose their memories. They don't know who they are. And they end up, I think it's going through like a simulation or something. It's like a medically induced flashback or something.
Yeah.
And so they go through these flashbacks and we get to see, they're definitely interacting actively as the people they are now with the flashback, but we get to see like the scenarios which they came from and their reactions to it. So it's also very, very interesting.
And that's also why I love it in sci-fi, because you can have that, like, it's a medical simulation or coma, like even contemporary stuff, like it doesn't even have to have a magical element. It can be a coma, or it can be some kind of, like I said, like a hallucinogenic or something. I mean, don't take drugs, but you can use it as an element.
Or it could be a dream. I mean, it can be a dream. It definitely doesn't have to be sci-fi. Just sci-fi has some like really exciting elements for your plot when you do that.
It's true. They can, I just feel like the things that get revealed can be more exciting in sci-fi because maybe the stakes are a little higher.
Yeah.
But that is kind of why it works, because you can have all these various different like means or like vehicles that you use to get the flashbacks going.
You have a lot more options, it feels like. Yeah.
And then it has this impact on like their active lives and how they're going to go forward, which
it's
really
true.
Cool. I like it when they interact with stuff.
I like it too. I love it. I love it when they interact with a flashback. I think it's one of my favorite things. I never put a name to it. I just really enjoyed it. But now that you've brought my attention to this thing that is an existing trope, I'm like, wow, it's amazing. I do love that every time it's happened.
I was watching The Blood Origin, and like I said, not a huge fan, didn't love it. But they get to that scene where they're like crossing this boundary, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, because I'm a writer, so I think a lot of times when you think about like TV and movies, you can kind of learn from it. I'm like, why is this not working for me? And I do think that mostly it's because it was relying on that too much to give us backstory. So from that point forward, they're like, don't you just love these characters now? And I'm like, no, I don't know enough about them to like them yet. And so you don't want to lean into it too much unless it is the entire premise of your book, right? If it's an interview style, or if the whole book is a simulation of some kind. I mean, that happens. I mean, Divergent leans on it pretty heavy. Half-Blood Prince leans on it pretty heavy. Like, that's okay. But one time to do a flashback like that, I just feel like that's not enough. So like a good example of this too is actually The Good Place. I don't know how far you got in that show when
I finished it. It's
the
great.
test where like if you can walk down this hall and not go into the rooms, we'll let you go back. But then Tahani, is that her name? She goes into the room with her parents and like has the confrontation with them, even though it's not them, it's an illusion, but she still gets to have that cathartic confrontation with them. So I do think this is a thing that happens in movies and TV a lot, and I think it's similar to like a time travel trope. It works really well in TV and movies because you can have subtle things happening in the background that don't inherently draw attention to themselves. But in a book, you would have to state it, and that inherently draws attention to it. So I think it can be a little more difficult to do in book form. But I think it would be cool to like kind of drag this into books more often, because I do think it works when you're not necessarily trying to hide anything in the flashback. You're trying to reveal things in the flashback. Sometimes you do want to hide things, especially in movies and TV. But if you're trying to reveal things with the flashback, then I think it can really work in writing, because that's inherently where the focus is going to be. You're going to be focusing on the details and revealing them. And I think that can work really well. And so I mean, I remember loving it when they did it in the Half-Blood Prince. And I, just never occurred to me that it was a trope, or that tropes were a thing back then. But to kind of pull it forward a little bit, I think is great. And you can use it in so many versatile ways. It can be you're flashing back to the villain's origin story. It can be that you're flashing back to something in the love interest's past, like it does in Divergent. Or, XYZ. And like we said, it can be a medically induced coma. It can be a magic thing. It can be a TV screen that's showing things you didn't know were being recorded. Now you have to relive them. But I think as long as there's like that torment element involved, I just think it adds a little something.
I think it does too. I also think it's just extremely cathartic, because I think every
Yes.
human, we can all say like, oh, we don't have any regrets. I am one of those people who typically says, oh, I don't have any regrets. And what I mean is, I can't imagine my life being different than it is now. And to me, that seems like an impractical waste of my emotional energy to worry about it.
Yeah.
But what human doesn't go, oh yeah, hindsight's 2020? Like, if you could go back and like see things differently, like, wouldn't you want to? Part of you, even if you're not because you want to change things, just because the catharsis of being able to go back and kind of see from an outsider's perspective if what happened really happened the way that you remember experiencing it. I just think that that's really cathartic, like, for the whole human experience, which is one of those things that it's so fun to capture in books, because books should reflect the human experience. And so I think that this trope is underdone. Now that you've brought it to light, I think we could do way more of this, because I'm trying to think of any instance of this where I haven't liked it. I think I've always liked it every time, because it's so cathartic and it reveals information in a very intriguing and exciting way. It usually has something to do, when it's an active flashback, it means something exciting is happening in the plot too.
Exactly.
So,
usually racing against time, or they're dying as it's happening, or they need the thing at the end of the trial to move on.
Exactly. Like, it's a high intensity situation too. So like, it just ramps up the stakes. So I mean, all in all, I want to see this way, way more for so many reasons.
It is great. I was like trying to come up with a list of examples, and I came up with quite a few. I think like Ready Player One could count, because the whole game system that is set up in that virtual reality is kind of like a flashback to the past. The Maze Runner kind of does this, when Thomas and what's her name start remembering their memories and all that kind of stuff. So there are examples. And because it is, you can do it in so many ways, I think it feels underdone, and maybe it is underdone. But I think people like it when you use it. So I think it can be a good way. If you have like one big like thing in like traumatic moment in the character's past that you want to reveal that is important to the plot going forward, somehow mixing it in with the current plot, I just think that's a great way to make things relevant and not waste space, because then you don't waste space on a flashback and a plot element in the present. You can kind of combine them, and that can help with your word count, and also just like with the pacing. So a lot of great things.
I think so. I think you have to keep in mind, when you're doing a passive flashback, as opposed to like an active flashback like we're talking about, it immediately puts a pause on the main plot. So it's not that you should never do them, but whenever you do just like a normal standard flashback, you're basically saying that for that whole flashback, like, the existing plot either isn't relevant, or everything is on pause. It just, it's not like it reduces the stakes. It just like puts them all in black and white. Like, it doesn't really matter anymore. And so, I mean, I'm someone who feels like we should only ever be ramping up the stakes. So, because I love that.
Yeah, you can lose the tension if you do too many flashbacks, and if it's too long. Again, like a sentence or a paragraph or so to do a flashback that's necessary is fine. But if you're going to go lengthy, maybe you want to make it more relevant to the plot by bringing it in like this.
A lengthy flashback I feel like just reduces the tension incredibly, and I'm not a fan of that. But an active flashback could be long, and that would still not be the case, because it would be relevant to the like current existing plot, which I love.
We're looking back and going forward at the same time.
Yes, exactly. I love the paradox. That's my favorite thing. Also, you could do this could work in any genre if your character has a high fever, perhaps, because it's like a hallucination, So if they've
talking
taken
to their
drugs, or someone's given them drugs, or they have a high fever, they've been hit in the head, like, there's all kinds of, it definitely doesn't have to just be sci-fi. Just sci-fi has some like really cool like plot things you can do, that are fun.
Exactly.
But it could be contemporary as well.
Right.
I think the difference is, in sci-fi, when you have like an active flashback, it's like, oh, did they really actually go back and do that? As opposed to when it was something like a hallucination or a fever, like, yes, they got to interact with the flashback and it felt like it was real, but we know that it's not. So that's really just up to whether you think it's important for that to be a possibility or not. You don't have to define it either way, but.
Yeah, I don't know how on topic this is, but there's this book called A World Without You by Beth Revis, I think is how you say her name. And I really like this. It's about this kid who is in like a mental health treatment facility, but he thinks that they're all being trained to use superpowers. So like that's his kind of delusion.
That would have been me.
It's awesome. It's like they all like there's I don't like people that are obsessed with fire, and it's not pyromaniac, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And a kleptomaniac, again, I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but like they're constantly stealing things, and he is interpreting everything like visually as people using magic. And like this girl with depression, hers is invisibility, and so like there's all this kind of cool stuff going on in terms of like, you know, theme. But also at the end there's this moment where you're kind of like, how did that happen if he doesn't have magical powers? And you're kind of left with this,
I
like,
love that.
maybe he's not wrong, even though he is, but maybe he's not. And I really like that questionability in something contemporary. Like, it's not magical realism, but it kind of leaves you wondering if it was.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It's not, but what if it was that little subgenre?
Yeah, there's just one anomaly, and you're like, oh, this kind of leaves everything up in the air.
That's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're using like a flashback by trial kind of trope, that I think it can add that kind of an element to a contemporary. If you're kind of going for that more mystical feel, but you want it to be grounded in the real world, you can make it seem like, okay, well, maybe they did talk to this dead loved one, or maybe they did, you know, change the past a little bit or whatever, through their interactions with, you know, a hallucination. And you can kind of bring that question in, even if you still want it to be technically a realistic fiction type of book. So
yeah, I totally agree.
It's fun.
Anything else that you want to school me on?
No, I'm trying to think. I wanted to talk about it now. I'm not really sure that I have a lot to say about it. How long has this episode been so far? Maybe we'll just
like
be short.
45 minutes. It might just be a slightly shorter episode.
Yeah, I hope that's okay with everyone. But I like Ash said, I would love to see this done more. And I think there's so many different ways you can do it. Again, do it right. Don't just stick it in there for no reason.
No.
You don't, you know, if your character's going to have a high fever or get drugged or something, that needs to have impact aside from just, hey, let's go through a flashback.
Yeah.
There needs to be like some kind of person doing that to them, or some kind of consequence of the injury, and you need to carry that through fully. But if you do that, I think it can be really great. And I think it can be in any genre.
So. I agree. I think there's more threads to weave together with an active flashback, and you can't like leave any loose ends, versus a passive flashback where you still really only have the main plot, and the main plot is unaffected by the flashback. You might learn like a little bit more, but it doesn't affect the plot. Whereas the active flashbacks affect the plot in multiple ways, because whatever the inciting incident of the flashback was, that affects the plot and sends it in one direction. And also whatever happened or didn't happen, or was remembered or experienced or changed in the flashback, also directly affects the plot. So there's multiple things that have an effect on the plot. So I guess also if you're like hitting a point where you're like, hey, maybe I don't have as much plot as I wanted to have, or my plot feels kind of boring, maybe look for an opportunity to use an active flashback, because it definitely gives you more content. You just can't let it fall flat after that. I feel like you really have to go out of your way to make sure that you weave everything in together.
Right. I also like that you're calling an active flashback. That's a good distinction, like active versus passive.
Yeah.
I like it. So maybe that's an easier way to think of it. I'm still going to call it flashback by trial in my head, but you guys
I like it. Flashback by trial. Whatever. Flashback by trial, active flashback, whatever it means to you. You can trial by flashback, whatever. It can be a made up word, you know, whatever it means to you, this topic.
Yeah, because
I just discovering is like one of my favorite things ever in storytelling, and I had never thought before about how to refer to it ever.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think I'm just so focused all the time on fantasy, and usually when this is done in a fantasy, it's like a trial. It's like a challenge, or the villain is doing something to them or whatever.
You're right.
And I love this, but there are other like sides of it. So so if you are a fantasy lover but you write in a different genre and you love this trope and you're like, well, I can't just put magic into my book, like you can still
utilize it,
appeal of this kind of trope, but ground it in whatever your story actually is.
But you're right, I do think it is usually used like as a trial in fantasy, and I think in sci-fi it's used either as a trial or it's used to like reveal like some elements of like a mystery that like answering questions that we need to move the plot forward.
I feel like in sci-fi, now that you mentioned that, I can't think of any specific example, but I feel like there might be aliens in certain worlds that like put humans through trials to see if they're worthy.
Or is that just
Babylon
a really
5?
great idea for a book?
I know. I do think Babylon 5 did this. Gosh, now I'm thinking about it. I think one of the humans
that's something
was put through a trial to see if he could handle the truth of like a universe truth, like a truth of the
Oh, yes. Actually, First Contact, the movie does this a little bit. Or Contact. It's not called First Contact. One of my favorite movies. It kind of does that a little bit at the end.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I do love Contact.
Yeah.
So again, sci-fi is just, there's something about it in the combination of that genre and that trope that I do think works really well. So if you love that, but you don't write sci-fi, I think there are ways to bring it into other genres. And I mean, in a world that is saturated with so many books to read, being unique is so hard. Maybe this is a good way to bump yourself up to the top of the fields.
Yeah, if you need a way to stand out and you think you can do it well, this is the one. I mean, I would love to see like 10 times as much of this as we do. So
it's so good. And like I said, it's so common in TV and movies that I think people will recognize it when you start to write it, but maybe in books it's not as common as, quote, it should be. So
yeah, I think that's very true. And everyone should go watch The Way Home.
Yes. So Ash, I have someone to talk to you about it.
Yeah, and
I mean,
so
you
I can talk
mom,
to someone. Yeah, but no, seriously, it's like literally only my mom and I that are watching it, and everyone else is like, no, because I know y'all heard me say Hallmark and immediately tuned out. I understand, okay, but
come on,
it's so good. Yeah, I want you to watch it, Carissa. That's the problem. Because I want to know your thoughts on it. Yeah, there's got to be a way.
Mooch off of a relative that has Hallmark.
Do you have
or something?
Peacock TV? I think they might have Hallmark.
No, I have nothing. But that's so normally it's okay until people tell me that they want me to watch stuff. So
yeah, The Way Home. Okay, we'll figure it out. Or you can just come out here and we'll just binge it all. It's not there's not that much of it to binge. So all right. Is that everything we've got on the flashback-by-trial?
Yeah.
Trope?
All for me.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, how has writing been going this week?
Writing has been so good. What did I tell? I think I told you guys last week that I finished my first draft of the book I was working on. Now I'm on the second draft and I'm almost done with it. It's like a very rudimentary second draft, right? I'm just kind of fixing some stuff at the beginning that I hadn't figured out until halfway through or at the end. So I'm kind of it's mostly a read through, but then I'm switching some scene orders around and stuff, but I'm really happy with it. It's much less of a mess than I thought it was. So that's really comforting.
That's nice. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, nothing too like specific. I don't know. I guess this is a writing update. Remember a couple weeks ago when I said that I would never learn the difference between lay and lie? Lay versus lie. I now know it. I did research and I feel very confident. I looked at a conjugation chart. Shockingly easier than you would think. No. It's just it's one anomaly, and the one anomaly throws everyone. And I just feel so knowledgeable and cool now.
You should. I'm never going to learn it. I'm just going to lean on you as my crutch and always ask you.
It's okay. I know. And so I was reading through this draft because this is a very recent, knowledge development for me. And I had used the wrong version and I caught it. And I was like, yes, I'm so cool. Now I can actually edit my own stuff for the lay versus lie difference.
Oh my gosh. That is too funny. I'm very proud of you. I will not achieve that in my lifetime. I feel certain.
Okay. I mean, I never thought I would until a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So I feel that, but
that's successful.
Yeah, I feel like everyone has the right, like writer editors. I think we all have the right to like one grammar rule. We just refuse to learn.
Yeah, I refuse to learn that one. It might not be the only one. It's the one I feel like I refuse because I just don't think I'll ever understand it. So
yeah. But yeah,
I don't use it that much. So
that's true. Ish.
I'll like rewrite sentences to avoid having to say
yes, that's true. I don't have to do that anymore. Anyway, I'm very proud of that. So it's not, I mean, it is writing related, but mostly editing related, I guess. Nice. But I'm really excited about this book. I think it's cool. I came up with a couple of like marketing details about it. I'm like, ooh, I could make this thing.
That's always good because you gotta love that, because sometimes when you query they'll ask like, do you have any like ideas for how to market this, and it's always like, I've not gotten that far.
No, that's your job. Or
yeah, I thought that was you.
That's why I'm querying you.
Yeah, exactly. I thought you were gonna take the lead on that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I have some cool ideas, and also this is just a random satisfactory thing. I have my notebook, it's actually right here, that I was taking notes on and like trying to figure out plot holes by writing them out and stuff. And assuming I have no other notes to take, I ended exactly at the end of the notebook So there
Ah,
are no extra pages and
that
no,
is so
like, none
satisfying.
needed and none
Yeah.
left. And
God,
that's
that's
never happened to
satisfying.
me my entire life. So that's very cool.
That happened to me last year with my last podcast notebook because all of
Ah,
my time codes, I like finished the last page and I was like, God, this feels amazing.
this is amazing. It'll never happen again, but gosh, it's cool
No,
for right now.
that is awesome. That's definitely
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
Well, anything else
So
for writing?
no,
No.
you.
I finished the first 25,000 of the second cozy mystery,
All
and I
right.
turned it in on over the weekend. And then this week I'm taking a break, like not intentionally, but because I just have so much work to do. I just don't see how I can get everything done and get all of my 5,000 words done. And I have to do the actual full-time job. Like I can't just be
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I'll just take a break on this job that pays me every
Right.
week." No. So I can't. So I probably am going to take a break most of this week from it. I've like only written like 500 words or something. And then I'll pick it up again next week, which the only difference is it just means I have like that hard deadline of 5,000 words a day, which I was already doing. It's just, it's a lot. I only have one more book after this. I mean, I'm supposed to have like 4 more, but I'm not going to do all of them because it's crazy and I don't hate myself that much. Um,
Yeah.
and then also I can get back to writing my own stuff. It's like
Hmm.
encouraging to know I have this capability, but also
Yeah.
it is killing me to do this. So I don't know that it's like healthy for me to try and do this.
You can like take it going forward. So like you don't do 5,000 a day, you do like 25, or you do 5,000 every couple days or something like
Yeah,
that. So you're like, I'm on a
exactly.
schedule. I know I can do it, but I don't have to kill myself over it.
Yeah, exactly. Or like set like just a much more reasonable, like this many words per week, and whatever days I get them done, I get them done. And instead of
Hmm.
like 25,000 words a week, I could like make it half of that or
Right.
even less. And I'm still making more progress than I usually make. I'm a binge writer. So it's very
Hmm.
hard for me to do like little pieces like that. But I've
Yeah.
been saying forever I might just need to do that. And surely this is encouragement to know like I can do it.
Right.
And it doesn't have I don't have to suffer all the time.
I part
So
of it is
that's my
probably that
status.
you don't really care about these as much, so you're
I
okay with
don't.
kind of you're just like putting words out there and you're like, I don't know
Yeah,
if I need to care yet that these are good.
that's
Um
the thing.
I did see someone on TikTok say that if you're struggling to plot a book, which I think could go into like a schedule thing, plot a book you don't care about, like
Hmm.
just all your throwaway ideas that aren't good,
Yep.
like plot that so that you know how to do it structurally, but
Hmm.
you're not actually invested, and then you know how to do it when you are invested.
Yeah.
So maybe this will be a good step. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. I definitely have gotten better at plotting books just because of this. And having to do these so quickly, you have to like plot it. It means I have to plot a whole new book every 2 weeks, like a whole
Mhm.
50,000 word book. And it's a mystery. So I feel like it's like a really specific type of plot you have to do too.
Mhm.
So I mean it's not like it's a great one, I don't think. I hope this one's better than the last. My mom liked the last like set that I wrote for a different client. She thinks they're
Mhm.
great. I thought they were bad then and I think they're bad now. So I mean,
Your mom is just
yeah,
supportive.
she's just really supportive. Also, I mean, like her standards are not as high, probably. That's why I
Yeah,
didn't
fair.
trust her when she said, "Hey, we should watch The Way Home. It's really
Yeah.
great." I was like,
But hey, sometimes she's right.
sometimes she's right, but sometimes she also likes like Hallmark shows, like normal Hallmark shows. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I just feel like that says something questionable about your taste in media. But you know what?
Don't
If
know that
she
I
says I'm
trust
a great
you.
writer, who am I to say that she's wrong, you know? Maybe I
Exactly.
am. Maybe I'm fantastic, even when I think I'm horrible.
She's
So,
right sometimes, could easily
exactly.
be right about you. So
Exactly. So, I'm doing it like I'm basically yeah, if I do the 3 books, I'm halfway through being done with the 3 books because I've done 1.5 now. So, thank God for that. It is so stressful. I have not
yeah.
yet broken it to my client that I will not be completing the whole 6 books, which is
Hmm.
not their fault unless they want to pay me a whole lot more, in which case I'll still have to kill myself, but I'll be getting paid better to kill myself. I still have to, I'll probably let them know at the end of this book, and they might be upset, which is
Right.
understandable, but it's kind of a bummer situation all around. So
Yeah.
blame
No one's
Upwork. I
happy.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
no one's happy. So we'll see how they take it. I hate
Uh-huh.
delivering bad news to clients. I've only ever had to deliver bad news to clients like a few times ever. I've never had to back. I've only once before had to back out of a job because I didn't want to work for the client because he was extremely openly racist. I was
Oh,
like, not comfortable with this content. Thanks. If he
yeah.
doesn't want to take these notes, I'm not going to work with him. And he was like, I don't want to take those notes. And I was like, I'm not working with him
Bye.
anymore. So anyways, and this guy's great. This guy, no problems with him. So I
Mhm.
feel bad, but oh
Right.
well. maybe there's another ghostwriter out there who needs the experience and is willing to devote and has the time to devote to it. It's not me. So that's my update. I can't wait to get back to my own stuff. So yeah. That's all I got.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. Is that all that you've got as far as writing updates go?
Yep.
All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, you guys can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't just have to show up on Apple Pods, although I know that's where most of you do. And if you guys want to join our writing group and you guys want to tell us what you guys are working on or complain about the horrible ghostwriting gig you picked up or whatever else, or you just want to tell us about your animal or your dog has a limp, or tell me I'm a horrible dog owner for not rushing my dog to the hospital, to the human emergency room, you can do all of that in our Discord group. We have a writing group on Discord. There's tons of channels on there that you guys can get into and chat. You can chat with each other, chat with us. If you don't want to do that, you can also message us. We're on social media. We are the Scripturient Society. We're on TikTok and Instagram. TikTok's got loads of funny videos if you're a writer. Instagram has just loads of helpful advice if you're a writer. Super fun either way. Highly recommend following both. And if you guys have something like you want to say, like write us a long letter, you guys can do that at contact@storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. You can also go to that website and check out our merch if you want to support the pod. If you are a writer or you like bookish things or writery things, we have merch that's very cool there. And we should come up with some new merch soon to put out for the new year because that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. So we got to think on that. We'll think of something fun for you guys and try to put something out new soon. But I think that's all that we've got. If you guys liked this and or you didn't hate it, if you wouldn't mind going below and giving us 5 stars, that would be fantastic. Your ratings actually really, really help us. So thank you guys for showing up as usual. And until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.